From a flicker of candlelight in 1789 to the glare of modern screens in the West Wing, every president has held the pen. Executive orders not passed by Congress, but etched into law by command. Some shaped history. Some sparked controversy. Others were forgotten. Until now. This is where we break them down. Every signature, every shift in power, every consequence still felt today. From Washington to Biden, welcome to Executive Order Watch.
Democracy, we live for it. For democracy, we fight for it. For democracy, we've died for it. And for democracy, we watch it. This is Executive Order Watch.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. As I stand before you now, I reflect upon the trials, responsibilities, and defining moments of this past year, 1952. It has been a year of tension, transition, and testing, both for our country and for me personally, as President of the United States. Around the world, the Korean conflict continues to weigh heavily on the conscience of our nation. Brave American men and women remain engaged in a fight to preserve freedom and resist tyranny on distant soil. The Cold War climate has not cooled. In fact, it has stiffened as global power balances shift and as communism seeks to extend its reach. Here at home, the American people have spoken, choosing a new president who will take office in January. I accept that verdict with pride in our democracy and with a sense of deep duty to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition. It is not power that defines leadership. It is the service, the sacrifice, and the decisions we make when times are hard. I have governed this nation with a steady hand, guided by the Constitution, and moved by the belief that the federal government must always strive to protect its citizens, uphold justice, and defend liberty, whether in the face of foreign threats or domestic unrest. This year, like the ones before it, demanded decisive action. Labor disputes, civil rights struggles, economic strains, and national defense all required attention, and they received it. I have relied on every tool granted to me by the law, including the power of the executive order, not to rule by fiat, but to ensure the continued operation of government and the security of the American people in a complex and rapidly changing world. Tonight, I will take you through the executive orders I issued during 1952, each one crafted to meet a need, solve a problem, or uphold a principle. Some were met with praise, others with criticism, but all were born of purpose. Before we get into those, I want to thank the American people for your resilience, your courage, and your unwavering belief in this great experiment of ours. My time in office may be drawing to a close, but my faith in the Republic and its people is as strong as ever. Now let us take a look together at the executive actions that helped shape this final year of my presidency. Executive orders. Executive Order 10,309, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,310, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the St. Louis-San Francisco Railway Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,311, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2, 1952. Executive Order 10,312, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,313, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Union Pacific Railroad Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,314, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Southern Pacific Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,315, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Great Northern Railway Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,316, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Northern Pacific Railway Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2, 1952. Executive Order 10,317, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the New York Central Railroad Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,318, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Pennsylvania Railroad Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,319, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,320, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,321, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Illinois Central Railroad Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,322, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Louisville and Nashville Railroad Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2, 1952. Executive Order 10,323, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Norfolk and Western Railway Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,324, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Atlantic Coastline Railroad Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,325, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Seaboard Airline Railroad Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,326, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Southern Railway Company and certain of its employees, signed January 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,338, establishing the President's Committee on International Information Activities, published January 22, 1952, EO 10339, excusing federal employees from duty on February 6, 1952, published February 2, 1952, EO 10340, directing the Secretary of Commerce to take possession of and operate the plants and facilities of certain steel companies. Published April 8, 1952, Executive Order 10,341, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Eastern Carriers Conference Committee and certain of their employees. Published April 10, 1952, Executive Order 10,342, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Pullman Company and certain of its employees. Published April 11, 1952, Executive Order 10,343, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Louisville and Nashville Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published April 16, 1952, Executive Order 10,344, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published April 16, 1952. Executive Order 10,345, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Southern Pacific Company and certain of its employees. Published April 17, 1952. Executive Order 10,346, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen and certain carriers. Published April 22, 1952, Executive Order 10,347, amending Executive Order 10,152, relating to the control of subversive activities. Published April 24, 1952, Executive Order 10,348, regulations governing the granting of allowances for quarters and subsistence to enlisted men. Published May 9, 1952, Executive Order 10,349, providing for the administration of the Mutual Security Act of 1951. Published May 12, 1952, Executive Order 10,350, transferring certain functions to the Secretary of the Interior. Published May 16, 1952. EO 10,351, restoring lands formerly withdrawn for military purposes to the jurisdiction of the Territory of Hawaii. Published May 20th, 1952. Executive Order 10,352, establishing the National Agricultural Advisory Commission. Published May 23rd, 1952. Executive Order 10,353, amending the Selective Service Regulations. Published May 26, 1952, Executive Order 10,354, suspending certain statutory provisions relating to employment in executive agencies. Published June 6, 1952, Executive Order 10,355, delegating authority with respect to acquisitions of property for defense purposes. Published June 9, 1952, Executive Order 10,356, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published June 12, 1952, Executive Order 10,357, amending the Civil Service Rules and providing for federal personnel administration. Published June 12, 1952, Executive Order 10,358, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Long Island Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published June 13, 1952, Executive Order 1035-9, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Texas and New Orleans Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published June 13, 1952, Executive Order 10,360, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Kansas City Southern Railway Company and certain of its employees. Published June 13, 1952, EO 10,361, modifying Executive Order number 10,289, relating to the Department of the Treasury. Published June 17, 1952, Executive Order 10,362, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Brotherhood of Railroad Trainmen and certain carriers. Published June 19, 1952. EO 10,363, amending the Selective Service Regulations. Published June 17, 1952. Executive Order 10,364, transferring certain lands from the Department of the Army to the Territory of Hawaii. Published June 26, 1952, Executive Order 10,365, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Great Northern Railway Company and certain of its employees. Published June 30th, 1952. Executive Order 10,366, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and certain carriers. Published July 2nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,367, establishing the President's Commission on the Health Needs of the Nation. Published July 15th, 1952. Dwight D. Eisenhower Executive Orders, 1952, EO 10368, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Florida East Coast Railway Company and certain of its employees. Published July 18, 1952, Executive Order 1036-9, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Central of Georgia Railway Company and certain of its employees. Published July 18, 1952, Executive Order 10,370, providing for the administration of the United States participation in the International Labor Organization. Published July 21st, 1952, Executive Order 10,371, transferring property and personnel from the Department of the Navy to the Panama Canal Company. Published July 24th, 1952, Executive Order 10,372, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way employees and certain carriers. Published July 24th, 1952, Executive Order 10,373, restoring lands to the jurisdiction of the Territory of Hawaii. Published July 30th, 1952, EO 10,374, excusing federal employees from duty on Saturday, August 30th, 1952. Published August 6, 1952, EO 10375, establishing the President's Advisory Commission on Presidential Office Space. Published August 13, 1952, Executive Order 10,376, transferring land to the control of the Department of the Interior for national park purposes. Published August 15, 1952. Executive Order 10,377, amending the Selective Service Regulations. Published August 21st, 1952. Executive Order 10,378, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published August 21st, 1952, Executive Order 10,379, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the carriers represented by the New York Harbor Carriers Conference Committee and certain of their employees. Published August 21st, 1952, Executive Order 10,380, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Brotherhood of Railroad Trainmen and certain carriers. Published August 22nd, 1952. Executive Order 10,381, modifying Executive Order 10,292 and authorizing the Secretary of Agriculture to carry out certain functions. Published August 29, 1952, Executive Order 10,382, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the carriers represented by the Eastern Carriers Conference Committee and the Western Carriers Conference Committee and certain of their employees. Published September 9, 1952, Executive Order 10,383, transferring jurisdiction over certain land from the Navy to the Department of the Interior for fish and wildlife purposes. Published September 12, 1952. Executive Order 10,384, amending Executive Order 10,096 to clarify the authority of agencies concerning inventions. Published September 17, 1952. Executive Order 10,385, establishing the President's Committee on Government Employment Policy. Published September 22, 1952. Executive Order 10,386, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published September 30th, 1952, EO 10387, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the carriers, represented by the Western Carriers Conference Committee and certain of their employees. Published October 2nd, 1952, Executive Order 10,388, modifying Executive Order 10,272, authorizing the use of certain lands by the Department of the Army. Published October 3rd, 1952, Executive Order 10,389, amending the Selective Service Regulations. Published October 4th, 1952, EO 10390, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published October 7th, 1952, Executive Order 103911, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Long Island Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published October 8th, 1952. EO 10392, establishing the President's Committee on Employment of Physically Handicapped. Published October 10th, 1952. Dwight D. Eisenhower Executive Orders 1952, EO 10393, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Chicago and Eastern Illinois Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published October 10th, 1952. EO 10394, restoring certain land in Hawaii to the jurisdiction of the territory. Published October 15th, 1952, Executive Order 10,395, transferring land from the Navy Department to the Department of the Interior for fish and wildlife purposes. Published October 15th, 1952, EO 10396, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the St. Louis-San Francisco Railway Company and certain of its employees. Published October 20th, 1952, Executive Order 10397, authorizing the appointment of certain persons in the Department of State. Published October 21st, 1952. EO 10398, Amendment of Executive Orders relating to the International Wheat Agreement. Published October 24th, 1952. Executive Order 10399, establishing the President's Committee on Water Resources Policy. Published October 30th, 1952. Executive Order 10400, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published November 1st, 1952. EO 10401, designating the International Finance Corporation as a public international organization entitled to certain privileges, exemptions, and immunities. Published November 5th, 1952, Executive Order 10402, providing for the administration of the Mutual Security Act of 1952. Published November 7th, 1952. EO 10403, amending the Selective Service Regulations. Published October 6th, 1952. EO 10404, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad Company and certain of its employees. Published October 10th, 1952. EO 10405, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the carriers represented by the Eastern, Western, and Southeastern Carriers Conference Committees and certain of their employees. Published October 10th, 1952.
Executive Order 10406, regulations governing the allowance of travel expenses of claimants and beneficiaries of the Veterans Administration and their attendants. Published October 14, 1952, Executive Order 10407, modifying Executive Order 10163, carrying out the Refugee Relief Act of 1952. Published October 21, 1952, EO 10408, designating the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development as a public international organization. Published October 24, 1952, Executive Order 10,409, establishing a seal for the U.S. Civil Service Commission. Published October 27, 1952, EO 10410. Authorizing the Director of the Bureau of the Budget to act under the Renegotiation Act of 1951. Published October 29, 1952, Executive Order 10411, restoring certain lands to the jurisdiction of the Territory of Hawaii. Published November 1, 1952, EO 10412, excusing federal employees from duty on Tuesday, November 4, 1952. Published November 5, 1952, EO 10413, restoring Kur, Ocean Island to the jurisdiction of the Territory of Hawaii. Published November 18, 1952, EO 10414, restoring land of the Upolu Point Military Reservation to the jurisdiction of the Territory of Hawaii. Published November 27, 1952, Executive Order 10415, amending Executive Order 9949 and modifying Executive Order 9721 on transfer of personnel to public international organizations. Published December 3, 1952, Executive Order 10416, amending Executive Order 10251 and Executive Order 10282 to suspend the 8-hour law for certain laborers and mechanics. Published December 3, 1952. Executive Order 10,417, creating a Board of Inquiry to report on a labor dispute affecting atomic energy facilities. Published December 5, 1952, EO 10417-A, excusing federal employees from duty on Friday, December 26, 1952. Published December 11, 1952, EO 10,418, amending EO 10,321. Published December 10, 1952, EO 10,419, restoring land to the Territory of Hawaii and transferring title. Published December 12, 1952, Executive Order 10,420, amending the Selective Service Regulations and Executive Order 10,363. Published December 19, 1952.
Pauline's Pizza, where we deliver happiness one slice at a time. What's your craving today?
Yeah, hi. Is Seymour there?
Oh, Seymour. I think he might be busy making our special pies. But hey, why not swing by the pizzeria? We've got a pie with your name on it. Anything else I can help you with?
I was looking for Seymour Butts.
Ah, I see. Well, if you're looking for Seymour Butts, he might be hiding behind a pepperoni slice. Anything else I can do for you today?
No, that's it.
Hi, I'm Terrence, a marketing professional with a passion for helping your business grow smarter and faster. Here at Da Bomb Digital Media, based right here in Atlanta, Georgia, we specialize in bringing your vision to life. Whether you're launching your first website or reimagining your entire digital presence, we've got you covered. From modern website design and search engine optimization to setting up your own AI-powered agency tools, we deliver innovative solutions that keep you ahead of the curve. Ready to unlock your business's full potential? Let's build something remarkable together. For more information, visit our YouTube channel. Just search Da Bomb Digital Media on YouTube and start exploring tips, success stories, and everything you need to elevate your brand.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Tonight, I want to take you back to the year 1952, a year of tension, transition, and tenacity. President Harry S. Truman was nearing the end of his historic presidency. He had led the nation through the end of World War II, navigated the early stages of the Cold War, and laid the foundation for modern American internationalism. But 1952, that year tested him, tested all of us. Let's be honest, the world was a dangerous place. The Korean War raged on with no end in sight. Nearly 120,000 American troops were still in combat. Domestically, the Second Red Scare continued under the shadow of McCarthyism. Fear of communism wasn't just on the battlefield. It was in our classrooms, our theaters, our town halls. But Truman didn't flinch. He governed with resolve. He used executive orders not as political tools, but as instruments of direction, to streamline, to protect, to prepare. Let's talk about 10 executive orders that mattered then and still matter now. Top 10 executive orders from 1952 EO 10340, Seizure of steel mills. Truman attempted to prevent a nationwide steel strike by seizing control of the mills. Though later overturned by the Supreme Court, this EO clarified the limits of presidential power, a ruling still cited today. EO 10355, delegating defense property acquisition, empowered federal agencies to acquire land for defense purposes. This helped build the U.S. Cold War infrastructure and is foundational to modern homeland security logistics. EO 10357, Federal Personnel Administration Reform, a major step in streamlining the civil service system, improving fairness, efficiency, and federal hiring practices. EO 10349, Administration of the Mutual Security Act, strengthened America's commitment to foreign aid and international alliances, leading to long-term ties with NATO and allies across Europe and Asia. EO 10385, Establishment of Government Employment Policy Committee, a step toward addressing discrimination in federal employment, a seed that would later bloom during the Civil Rights era. EO 10384, Clarification of Government Patent Rights, ensured that inventions by federal employees could benefit the government and the public, a key principle in public-private innovation. EO 10392, Committee on Employment of the Physically Handicapped Advanced Disability, Inclusion in the Workforce. It was ahead of its time and paved the way for the Americans with Disabilities Act decades later. EO 10347, Modification of Loyalty Security Program, adjusted loyalty review procedures, balancing national security with civil liberties, a vital recalibration during the Red Scare. EO 10399, Water Resources Policy Committee, marked the beginning of coordinated federal planning for water conservation and usage, critical now in our fight against climate-related droughts. EO 10366, Board on Railroad Labor Dispute, reflected Truman's proactive use of federal power to prevent labor disruptions that could harm the economy, an example of crisis management still relevant today. Other major events of 1952. Beyond Truman's pen, the world was moving fast. In November, Dwight D. Eisenhower was elected president, signaling a shift toward Republican leadership after 2 decades of Democratic control. The United States tested its first hydrogen bomb, ushering in a terrifying new chapter of the nuclear arms race. Elizabeth II became Queen of the United Kingdom following the death of her father, King George VI. The polio epidemic ravaged American families, and research by Jonas Salk would soon lead to a vaccine that changed the world.
The National Security Agency, NSA, was officially established, marking a deepening of America's intelligence and surveillance capabilities. Closing thoughts. Truman's 1952 wasn't perfect, far from it. The steel mill seizure backfired, and the Korean War dragged on. But Truman did what leaders must. He made the hard calls, even when they were unpopular. And the legacy of those decisions, those executive actions, still shapes our governance today. From labor to innovation, from civil rights to global alliances, Truman's 1952 was a year of groundwork. We don't get to choose the challenges of our time, but we do get to choose how we meet them, just like Harry did. Thank you, and may God bless the United States of America. Greetings to all truth seekers, those brave enough to look history in the eye and demand more than myths and flag-wrapped silence. Today we examine the presidency of Harry S. Truman, not with blind reverence, but with the clarity of hindsight. 4 years, from 1945 to 1949, that changed the arc of nations and the soul of America. Let's begin at the moment of transition. Truman became president not by election, but by fate. April 12, 1945. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is gone, and the weight of the world crashes onto the shoulders of a man who was never fully briefed, never fully prepared, and never fully trusted, at first. But oh, how quickly he moved. Within weeks, he would become the only man in history to order the use of atomic bombs, dropping them on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The war ended, but not the conversation. Some say he ended the killing, others say he redefined it. Whatever your stance, it was the birth of the nuclear age, and he lit the match. Now let's turn to Reconstruction, The Marshall Plan, a bold, unprecedented campaign to rebuild Europe, combat hunger, and contain communism. Billions were spent, not on war, but on hope. That was Truman at his best, investing in peace while standing firm against tyranny. And then came civil rights. Against the advice of his own party, Truman issued Executive Order 9981, desegregating the U.S. Armed Forces. Think about that. A sitting president, raised in segregated Missouri, chose justice over votes. It cost him Southern allies, but secured his place in the struggle for equality. But let's not skip over the contradictions. The loyalty program, the Red Scare, McCarthy's rise. Truman opened the door to the surveillance of American citizens. Fear of communism overtook fear of injustice. Thousands of federal workers were investigated, many without due process. And don't forget the housing crisis, the labor strikes, the inflation battles. Truman wasn't always graceful. Sometimes he was downright confrontational. He called critics snivelers, snobs, even sons of bitches. That Missouri fire burned hot in the Oval Office. Still, he stood firm when it mattered most. The Berlin airlift, the founding of NATO, the containment of Soviet aggression without firing a single bullet in Western Europe. That's foreign policy with vision. Now let's be clear, Truman was not a flawless man. He told racist jokes in private, supported Japanese internment early on, and struggled to fully break free from his era's prejudices. But he evolved. And that matters, because the truth is, greatness isn't about never falling. It's about what you do after the fall. Harry S. Truman left office with abysmal approval ratings. Today, he's regarded as one of our most consequential presidents. Why? Because he made decisions, unapologetically, courageously, sometimes imperfectly, but always with a belief that the buck stopped with him. And my friends, that's the lesson for us today. Leadership isn't easy, truth isn't clean, and history doesn't hand out awards, it reveals them in time. So as we look to our own leaders, present and future, let us measure them not by popularity or party, but by whether they risk comfort for principle. Because Truman did. And history noticed. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and always, always, stay true to the truth. For democracy, we live for. For democracy, we fight for. For democracy, we die for. See you around. Some write history with blood, some with laws, but the sharpest stroke comes from the pen. Executive power ain't just a tool, it's a weapon wielded by the few, affecting the many. They sign it, we live it. They order it, we obey it. Here, watching, digging, remembering, from the plantation to the proclamation, from internment camps to civil rights stands, from surveillance laws to student loan draws. Order can change your life, and you might not even know it, but now you do. So stay locked in, stay woke, stay sharp. We ain't just talking about power, we tracking it. Executive Order Watch, and we ain't blinking.